We've got lunch in Ann Arbor. We got dinner in Lincoln. And we've got a late night snack in Eugene. Big Ten breakfast. It's now served. Welcome to week 2 of Big Ten Breakfast. My name is Dan, the gentleman over there who is just as handsome as ever. Ty, how you doing after week 1? Everything good?
Everything's great. I am fired up for week 2.
Love to hear it. We've got a big week 2, and it wouldn't be college football, wouldn't be Big Ten football if we didn't freak out after 1 week. So, in the spirit of that, who can ease your post-week 1 concerns with a strong performance, let's call it, in week 2?
Yeah, I think the answer is Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan running an effective offense against Texas puts the rest of the conference, puts the rest of college football on notice to some extent because they still have the defense. The question is the offense, and especially after last week when new coach Sherrone decided he was going to go with Davis Warren instead of Alex Orji as the main signal caller, a top 5 team would be a really good demonstration for what they could do on offense. With Texas coming to town, if they're able to go out there, if they're able to achieve some balance with their offense, not just be all ground oriented, but actually have some real pop in the passing game, I think that will go a long way towards assuaging my feelings, making me feel better about what's to come with the Michigan offense. And certainly the rest of college football would have to look at that and say, whoa, given their defense, now if they've got an offense to complement it, they'd be a pretty tough out.
Yeah, and basically what you're saying, right, if Davis Warren is really spinning it, something like that, and Alex Orji is getting his act together, whatever, as a passer, whatever the case may be, it not only means that they're improving towards pretty good, efficient, whatever, it means the offensive line is improving and coming together nicely, a new offensive line. It means a receiver or two is stepping up. It means the running game. That means the play calling with a new full-time offensive coordinator. It means it's all coalescing against a huge opponent. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, and look, I think Michigan can win this game by running the football. I think they're going to have some success running the football against the Texas Longhorns. But what matters to me and what I think ultimately determines the fate of this game, what happens on those 15 to 17 pass attempts that we're going to see from Davis Warren or Alex Orji or some combination of both? What happens on those plays is going to dictate how Michigan fares in this football game. If they're able to establish a bit of a changeup, something that can keep the Texas defense on its toes, then we're talking. But if we're suddenly out there flailing, throwing the football more out of desperation than as any part of a game plan, a balanced attack, that's when I think Michigan could get into trouble. So they need to prove to me in week 1 that they have what it takes to throw the football and be balanced on offense against a really good opponent.
Yeah, my answer is going to be Oregon here, and I know that's a personal answer, but after struggling at times to separate for actually most of the game against Idaho last week, and the offensive line looking like it needed a lot of work, it just wasn't right, and I know they're beat up on the inside of that offensive line, but it's shots downfield, right? It's figuring out who's playing where in the secondary, and at linebacker, we saw a lot of rotation at times last week. And so Oregon taking on Boise State, who's going to look to run the ball a ton, but take advantage of play action opportunities and see who they can pick on in this Oregon secondary. And then the Boise State defense, which I don't think is great, but if Oregon is playing Oregon truly, like Dan Lanning likes to point out in his press conferences, then Oregon is the one that's going to need to find guys downfield. Dylan Gabriel is going to need to have faith in this offensive line in front of him and even just hit those corner routes, hit those deep routes, whatever, something he wasn't doing against Idaho. So if this offense looks like the machine it turned into last year, then Oregon all of a sudden, I think there's a calm, I think, about their chances to win this conference, if not, fly to higher heights.
As an Oregon alum, though, Dan Rubenstein.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to what you saw a week ago? Because this was a program in the offseason that loaded up, was very active in the transfer portal, obviously has been very active on the high school recruiting beat as well, to come out there against a good FCS team like the Idaho Vandals, but still perform the manner that they did. How did you react to that?
Negatively.
Yeah.
Negatively is my answer, right? It was a difficult watch. It was the worst offensive performance of the Dan Lanning era relative to opponent. Obviously, they only scored 3 in his first game against Georgia, but against a tough FCS opponent, it still should not have been what it was, right? It's a new look offense in that it's Dylan Gabriel running things. He's old and experienced, right? Evan Stewart, a ton of experience at receiver. Tez Johnson, a ton of experience. Jordan James, a ton of experience. These tackles, a good amount of experience. It was not a fun watch for me personally, no.
So with that being said, which teams that looked really good last week have another opportunity in week 2 to reinforce what we saw in week 1?
It's a good question. To me, there's only one answer, and that's Nebraska. Obviously, we don't know what exactly beating up on UTEP means, but we know that Dylan Raiola looked comfortable and made plays and spread the ball around. They ran the ball well. They shared the wealth against UTEP. If they're able to do that against the Colorado defense, which they should be able to do some of, at the very least, some of that, I don't know, people are going to lose their minds in Lincoln, right? Like, to do that on network television, under the lights, with the hype that Dylan Raiola came into this season with, and then being able to find pop at receiver and at running back and have the offensive line improve from where they were last year. Again, against the Colorado defense that many teams should be able to put up yardage and points against. We saw North Dakota State do it in Boulder. So, to me, if they're able to reinforce what they did against UTEP last week, we're going to be talking about Nebraska in a different light to me.
Well, and it's not just that. What was the rub on Nebraska last year? They had no offense. Played defense, but offense was a big concern. This offseason, not just the addition of Raiola, but Matt Rule has been pretty active in trying to bolster that side of the football. In order for them to win a game against Colorado, they got to score, Dan.
Yes.
Even if the defense performs, even if the defense carries its weight, this is a Nebraska team that's going to need to score high 20s, low 30s, mid 30s in order to outscore a team like Colorado Buffaloes, who may not have a defense, but we know can play offense. So that in and of itself, scoring to that extent, I think for the Cornhuskers would really be a pretty big deal. Even if they don't win, to the question, I think it would reinforce what we saw last week, which was sort of a renaissance on offense.
Who do you have?
Yeah, for me, it's Maryland, and it's not that hard of a question. Maryland pounded UConn. I mean, pounded UConn in week 1. And it further highlighted something that I think you and I have been talking about for a couple months now, and that is Maryland's actually got really exciting skill talent.
Yeah.
3 quarterbacks combined for 381 passing yards. As a team, they ran for nearly 250 yards. Your guy, Ty Felton, did eat well.
He ate.
178 receiving yards. They've got those dudes that can be game breakers. But it was UConn. It was UConn. We need to see Maryland against a better opponent. I do think Michigan State's a better opponent. I want to see how that offensive line holds up because they're basically brand new up front. Michigan State was not great on defense a year ago, mind you, but it is still a veteran unit, I think, with a better coaching circumstance this year as opposed to last.
Yeah.
If Maryland can go out there, if they can control the line of scrimmage, if they can protect the passer, that's going to go a long way for me as somebody who watched and was impressed by them in week 1 and how I feel about them moving forward.
Yeah, it's a situation if Maryland's able to keep doing what they did last week, what they did last year, last couple of years with Talia, then it is a system situation, right? It's next man up to keep this train rolling. And, you know, Michigan State struggled at times last week, and I think that was mostly on offense. Defensively, I think they're going to be in a pretty good place sooner rather than later. So if they can figure out offensive skill rotations, if Aiden Childs can be a little bit more accurate downfield, yes, they become more dangerous, but I think Maryland's just further along.
I think they're further along, and honestly, if the offensive line comes to play, if it gels a little bit quicker than I was expecting, I have to go back and redo the calculus on the Terrapins this year. I really do, because I was not expecting a whole lot from them just because it felt like the line up front was really, really shaky. But given the skill talent, if they are able to go out there and prove themselves, I think we have to revise our thinking there.
All right, speaking of proving oneself, who do you think and who do you look at as having a great opportunity to establish for the first time who they want to be, who they actually are in 2024?
Is it weird to answer this question with Iowa?
Not at all.
Iowa.
Okay.
The Iowa identity is not necessarily a new thing. I don't think the Iowa identity in 2024 is fundamentally that different from what it's been the last couple of years. They play defense. Sometimes they play offense. For the most part, it's been comically bad. But if we take last week as any sort of indication for what is to come, yes, the first half was rocky, but they ended up with 40 points in that football game. That doesn't really prove much against an opponent like Illinois State. But now with the Cyhawk game on deck with Iowa State coming to town. This obviously is a much tougher opponent. They can prove their mettle against another good team in a rivalry spot. If they can go out there and score 2 or 3 touchdowns against Iowa State, I don't even care if they don't win, Dan.
Right.
But if they can look more serviceable on offense, that would, I think, for me, go a long way towards establishing whatever this new identity is on offense under Tim Lester. Just prove that it can be somewhat efficient. Just prove that it can be somewhat productive. Prove that you have a second pitch to your defense, which, of course, is always going to be the main show in town under a Kirk Ferentz team. So I want to see what they can do against Iowa State. I am hopeful, but I'm a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a similar answer in Illinois, who obviously looked totally good last week. But in terms of what they want to look like, so similar to Iowa, the best version of themselves, it's going to mean offensive line improvement from where they were last year. Illinois this week, of course, has Kansas in a revenge spot after looking pretty sloppy on offense last year in Lawrence. And then what Illinois didn't have last year was similar in that, like, just go downfield sometimes. Have that out pitch. If you're able to run the ball well, find some pop on the outside. They were efficient short last year, but they were not at all getting that pop downfield. So to me, for Illinois, against a Kansas defense, which should be improved this season, but still not world beaters within that Big 12, I think there's opportunity in Champaign to sort of figure out something new with this offense, with the same quarterback as last year, with a new receiver or two, with a healthier situation on offense. This is a huge opportunity for the Illini to, I think, ascend back to that pain in the ass type program within the conference.
And the point spread has given some indications that it could be that kind of game. That This could be a closer game. The point spread has been less than a touchdown all week. Obviously, these things change, but Vegas is looking at this game similarly, seeing Illinois and saying, could they be a pain in the ass here? Who knows? We'll see. All right, next question, Dan. What do you need to see out of heavy favorites this week in week 2?
I want to see, I mentioned Kansas, right, and how good they were last season. Well, Penn State has early returns on their new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, who was at Kansas last season. They got Bowling Green this week, right? Yep. Penn State showed out at West Virginia with the weird rain delay situation. If they can keep that train going, and they should be able to against this Bowling Green defense, especially on the ground, to me, that's the big thing, because that to me was the revelation. As much as we want to talk about Drew Aller, which I think is worthwhile, if we're talking about a team they should be blowing out, they should be able to run the ball for a chunk of this game. So I want to see the week 2 improvement over a very promising and strong week 1 from Penn State against Bowling Green.
I would actually like to see more in the passing game.
Okay.
If I'm being honest with you, because it looked better against West Virginia, no doubt about that. But it wasn't like they involved the entire receiver room. Only 2 receivers were involved. The leading receiver was Harrison Wallace, who caught 5 balls and had a good game. What about Julian Fleming? Where was he? What about some of these other names that we have read about in the build-up to the 24th season that were not involved at all in this game against West Virginia? Bowling Green, to their credit, is a decent MAC team. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But this is a particular instance for Penn State where they can air it out, they can take some chances, and hopefully get some new names on the score sheet. So that's what I'm looking for in addition to what they can do on the ground. For me, it's USC. I did not see week 1 coming against LSU. I did not see it coming.
I did pick USC, to be clear, but I didn't see USC looking as strong on both sides as they did.
I didn't see it coming on the defensive side nor on the offensive side from Miller Moss. I want to see a team that shows killer instinct. The game this week is Utah State. USC is going to have ample opportunity the rest of the way to showcase what they can do against better sides. I want to see them pound the ever-loving snot out of Utah State in this game. I want to see more out of Miller Moss. I want to see more out of the ground game. I want to see this defense continue to take a step forward and look ferocious. These are the teams that USC needs to pound into the dirt. I want to see that killer instinct on display.
Yeah, and Utah State, by the way, I think they might be starting Bryson Barnes, who last year beat USC, right?
Correct.
Wasn't that long ago. He came in relief of Spencer Petras last week for Utah State. So, yeah, I think it's just a TCB game for USC. Just take care of business emphatically and don't play down to an opponent. Don't make it seem like they just played to the moment last week against LSU. If they're able to take care of business, also their home opener, right? Penn State's home opener, USC's. Really revel in that, like, returning champs coming home. By champs, I mean they beat LSU in week 1. But really revel in that, right? That they're celebrating this new era of USC football, hopefully.
There he is. It's the big guy.
All right, Dan, it's week 2. Tell me who's eating.
Oh, great question, Ty. Nick Singleton against Bowling Green, Penn State running back. You saw him in the open field last week against West Virginia. I don't know. It seems pretty obvious he's going to keep that train rolling against the Falcons. Number 2, Terrence Ferguson for Oregon, star tight end. I think the offense is going to be better, as mentioned, and maybe it's a step on that process that it's going to start with the tight end downfield as a safety valve for Dylan Gabriel. And number 3, I'm going to say Jay Higgins, all-American caliber, all-conference caliber linebacker at Iowa. I don't know. It's the Cy-Hawk game. Picking a linebacker to eat and make a bunch of tackles on short runs seems like almost insultingly obvious. So that's who I have eating.
He could be the leading scorer for Iowa. Who knows?
It's always on the table.
Always a possibility. I've got Jonah Coleman, Washington running back. Good game against Weber State. Begs the question, what does it mean if Washington has a good ground game, Dan? I think they've got a pretty good quarterback if they've got a ground game to complement the passing attack. I think that makes the Huskies perhaps better than initially thought. So that's number 1. Number 2, Isaiah Nair, the speed merchant. He's been all over college football from Texas to Wyoming, now with Nebraska. He was the leading target a week ago for Dylan Raiola. We know he can take the top off a defense. We'll see if he's matched up with Travis Hunter. That could be cool to watch from afar. But I think Isaiah Nair eats well against the Colorado secondary that is still pretty porous outside of Hunter. And last but certainly not least, Max Brosmer, baby. I'm back. Back on the Brosmer train.
Doubling down.
It was not a good week in week 1, granted, against North Carolina, a team that they should have moved the ball better against. But suffice to say, got a game this week against FCS Rhode Island. New opportunity to renew the offense, renew the faith, restore the preseason optimism that a lot of us had about this Golden Gophers season in 2024. So I look for Max Brosmer to get on track with this passing attack.
You're in no position to challenge my expertise.
And finally, let's make our picks and get into what I consider to be the most important part of Big Ten Breakfast, which is featuring a brand new breakfast to us anyway. Ty, who are your picks in the 5 biggies in the Big Ten?
I am on Texas.
Oh.
Minus the number against Michigan. I like the Michigan defense, but as I said, concerns about that offense and what it looks like specifically through the air.
Yeah.
That's my biggest question. I'm on your Oregon Ducks minus the number.
Scary.
Against Boise State. I think last week was a bit of an aberration. My expectation is that they will run and throw and score against a porous defense when Boise State comes to town. So give me the Ducks. Give me Colorado plus the points against Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to win this game. I do. But I also think there's a possibility this ends up as a shootout, and we know that Colorado can score. So I don't trust their defense, but I do trust their offense to keep this one relatively close within the number. I'm going Iowa State in the Cy-Hawk game. I just like their team a little bit more than I do Iowa's, and I have questions about the Iowa offense. And last but not least, Maryland. We talked about Maryland earlier, but I think this is a really good opportunity for this offense, for the skill talent, to again show out, this time against a Big Ten opponent in Michigan State. I've got Maryland minus the number. How about you?
I feel similarly in most of these games. I'm going Iowa, right? I've too many times looked at this Cy-Hawk game and be like, I think there's something sneaky about Iowa State this year. Ooh, I like these receivers. Ooh, I like Matt Campbell's momentum. Ooh, I like this quarterback. Brock Purdy was incredible. Iowa still got the best of him a lot. So I'm going with the Hawkeyes here in this one. I just have been hurt too many times picking against Iowa in the Cy-Hawk game. So I'm going in that direction. I'm very fearful about picking Oregon in this game, but I worry about Boise State's defense, and I like the jump from week 1 to week 2. I think the offensive line will be better and healthier for Oregon. I like Maryland big. I do. I think Michigan State still has a ways to go. I'm with you on Colorado keeping it close enough because of that passing attack. We just haven't seen anything from Nebraska, right? Nebraska's all good vibes right now, but we need accomplishment against a team, especially an offense with a heartbeat, and losing the way they did at the end of last season. I just need to see it before I fully believe, and I think that's okay.
And hey, look, Nebraska scoring 30-some points was not a conversation we had at all last year. This is not a good offense given circumstances. So new talent, new optimism is abound in 2024. For them to win a game like this, they're going to have to show what their offense can do.
Yeah, and I'm a believer in Texas in this specific kind of game because of what they did against Alabama last year in a similar spot. So I'm going with Texas there until I see Davis, Warren, or whoever really succeed downfield and spinning it for Michigan. So we're very similar on this. And we're also very similar on our enthusiasm about Iggy's in Ann Arbor, Ty. Last week, we went with a very old place for breakfast in State College. The Corner Room, yes?
Corner Room, yeah.
Some grilled stickies. Mm-hmm. I'm going with Iggy's in Ann Arbor, right next to campus by the State Theater. Breakfast sandwiches, premium breakfast sandwiches. Now you're scratching me where I itch. So when you look at this menu, you've got different options. You've got meat options, cheese options, bread options, spice options. What do you get? Maybe you've had a few too many pops the night before, Ty.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe we should, we're going to be in Ann Arbor. Maybe we should have a meetup at Iggy's. What are you getting at breakfast sandwich-wise to start your Saturday off right?
Well, the way I see this menu, you got to pick your bun, your roll first.
Yes, of course.
So first things first, I'm going to go brioche.
Okay.
Then on the brioche, I want to get sausage, egg, and I think yellow cheddar is the choice for me. It also looks like they might put some hash browns on that sandwich.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is always kind of a special
no-brainer.
treat. Always a no-brainer if you can find a place that'll do it. So for me, it's the sausage, egg, and cheese, and the hash brown if they're willing to do it, maybe with a side of coffee or tea or something like that. How about you?
I'm going to have to do some further visual investigation between sausage and bacon. I do love a good, bacon, egg, and cheese. I'm also probably going brioche. We'll say sausage or bacon, maybe both, Ty, if I'm really wounded Saturday morning. I'm going to go with an egg. I'm going to go with American cheese, though Pepper Jack sometimes sings my name. American cheese, hash brown on there, mashed avocado. How about some comeback sauce, Ty? A little bit of spice, a little bit of creaminess. I'm really soaking everything up. Probably go with an iced coffee. I'm iced 365, Ty. I don't know how you feel about coffee, if you like a hot drink or a cold drink. 365 days of iced coffee for this guy.
Wow. In Big Ten country, no less.
In Big Ten country, we're there in November for the Oregon game. I don't care. The colder it is outside, the colder that coffee needs to be inside of me. I don't know what that means.
Suit yourself.
Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. On that note, Big Ten Breakfast Week 2. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, subscribing, however you are choosing to, be our digital friends. We appreciate it. So, We'll see you next week. Get something to eat.
Go eat, man.